Pack up your desk by day's end. HR will process your exit paperwork. That was the message staring back at me on my computer screen, cold, abrupt, and completely impersonal. I read it again, hoping I'd misunderstood. But no, it said exactly what I feared. 6 years of commitment to Iron Ridge Transport, and they canned me with a generic email. All I'd done was take 2 days, that they approved, to bury my stepfather. We require employees who place their professional responsibilities first, the message went on. Like I'd visited some random meeting, not the funeral of the one man who'd been like a real father to me. I leaned back, my chair creaking in the near silence of early morning. The office was quiet, the sun barely beginning to rise. I'd shown up early, trying to get a jump on the pile of work that built up while I was gone. I'm Nina Thornton. Or at least, I was the regional lead for Iron Ridge's highest performing branch, up until 2 minutes ago. I'm 32, and I'd put my heart into building more than just results. I built a unit of people who actually cared about each other. We shared celebrations, weathered tough times together, and pushed each other to be better. I took in my desk, what was left of it. A framed shot of us from a retreat last year. A few handwritten notes from folks I mentored. Everything I had to show for those years of loyalty could fit neatly in a single cardboard box. At the bottom of the email, I saw the signature, Grant Keller. My direct manager. The same guy who'd approved my leave just last week. The official reason? Inadequate presence during critical operations. Apparently, grieving my dad fell under poor time management. I didn't lose it. Took a photo of the message, forwarded it to my personal inbox, and shut the computer down. I stood up, took a breath, and began boxing up my things. By the time a few others wandered in, my desk was halfway bare. Meg from accounting stopped in her tracks. Nina? What's going on? I got laid off, I told her, keeping my voice even. What? Why on earth? They didn't like that I used my bereavement leave. Guess saying goodbye to my dad didn't align with their priorities. Her face twisted from confusion to pure anger. That's ridiculous. Have you spoken to Lisa? She needs to hear about this. I haven't, I said, I'm not going to make it a battle. But I'll remember it. Working with people day in and day out, you learn to pick up on things without them saying a word. As more of my team came in, their reactions told me everything. Jake, always the bright one in the morning, froze the second he heard. I stopped him with a shake of my head. It's done, Jake. Grant pulled the trigger. But the merger, we just closed Netlog. And the numbers are up, what, 15%? That was all your work. I gave him a sad smile. Apparently, that didn't count. By mid-morning, all 5 of my team members were there, clustered around my desk like a silent protest. Miles, who rarely showed emotion, looked like he was ready to punch a hole through the wall. The others, Jake, Renee, Julia, and Helen, stood by with shock and quiet fury on their faces. You can't go, Elisa said through tears. Mason's up for renewal next week. We're still in talks for the Hector contract. You're the only one who knows the back end of that system. I sealed up the box. Grant should have thought about that before firing me for showing up to my stepfather's funeral. You could feel the weight of that sentence land hard. The grief was still raw. The betrayal just added a fresh layer to it. Everyone, back to your stations, a voice cut in sharply. Grant showed up, arms crossed, expression hard as granite, saying everything without a word. We've got deadlines. Move along. No one budged. Now, he said louder. Slowly, they returned to their desks, each giving me one last glance before walking away. Grant stepped closer and lowered his voice. You should have waited to pack up. Could have handled this more discreetly. I looked him right in the eye. Like the discreet way you fired me by email after approving my leave? His jaw flexed. The business landscape shifts quickly. Iron Ridge needs folks who can adjust. He straightened his tie. HR is waiting. Let's not drag this out. I picked up the box. Don't worry. I won't cause a scene. But I hope you remember this, Grant. It might come back around. HR was a cold, pale room with bare walls and a faint smell of toner. Gloria Reed sat behind the desk. She'd only been with the company for a few months, and it was clear she was uncomfortable. I'm sorry about this, Nina, she said softly, sliding papers across. And I'm very sorry for your loss. Thanks, I replied, my eyes scanning the print. Standard deal, 2 weeks' pay, a clause saying I wouldn't badmouth the company, and a reminder that I couldn't work for any competitors for 12 months. Do you know why this happened? Gloria asked gently. It just seems sudden. I paused, wondering how much to say. Then I figured, might as well be honest. I pulled out my phone and held it up for Gloria to see. 2 days of approved bereavement leave, and I'm out, for not prioritizing work. Her professional mask slipped just a bit. Her eyes widened as she read the screen. This is the official termination, she asked, like she couldn't believe it. Just an email. She spoke more softly. Just between us, what happened here doesn't feel right. If you ever wanted to take this further. I don't, I said, shaking my head. But thank you. Walking back through the main office felt heavier than I expected. I could feel the stares, though no one said anything. My team sat quietly at their desks, watching. I gave them a small smile, my final act as their leader. Outside, the warm breeze was warmer than it should have been. I placed my box in the trunk, got behind the wheel, and let myself sit there for a minute to take it all in. Then the messages started coming, anger, encouragement, loyalty. These weren't just folks I worked with. These were my people. I started the engine, a plan already taking shape. I wasn't going to fight Iron Ridge in court, even though I probably had a solid case. I'd go a different route, quiet, calculated. Like my dad always said, the rocks don't move. Just then, my phone rang. It was Derek Jones, the CEO of Nordiv Systems, our top competitor. We'd met at a logistics conference last year, stayed in touch. He'd been trying to get me on his team for months. Now seemed like the right time to call him back. Nordiv's office was a completely different world. Bright, open spaces, big windows overlooking the city. People talking, collaborating, not stuck in cubicles like drones. Derek greeted me with a solid handshake and a sharp look in his eyes. I've been hoping you'd reach out, he said, walking me toward a glass-walled meeting room. Didn't expect the circumstances, though. Word travels fast in this business. He already knew I was out, even if he didn't have the full story. I gave him the rundown. Wow, he said, frowning. That's not just bad leadership, that's inhumane. Bereavement leave exists for a reason. Iron Ridge has always cared more about numbers than people, I replied. I just didn't think I'd be the one they tossed aside. He leaned in. I'll be straight with you, Nina. We're expanding, and we need someone with your experience. I want you to lead the division. The job's yours if you want it. My heart skipped. Division director. That was a whole new level, more responsibility, a real leadership role, and definitely better pay. What about my non-compete? I asked. He gave me a confident smile. Our legal team already looked into it. It's too vague to hold up, and even if they try to enforce it, we'll handle the legal stuff. I'll need to think it over, I said. Absolutely. Take the weekend. Let's talk next week, he said, standing up to shake my hand again. That evening, I met up with Julia and Jake at a quiet little place called City Field, a local pub far enough from downtown that we'd avoid any awkward run-ins with Iron Ridge folks. They arrived together, both looking angry and concerned. How are you holding up? Julia asked as she slid into the booth. I'm okay, I said honestly. It's been rough, but I'll find my way forward. Jake let out a bitter laugh. Grant's completely lost. No one can find the Henderson files, and your system access still hasn't been reassigned. Sounds like Grant's mess to clean up, I said, sipping my water. It's bigger than that, Julia said, lowering her voice. Everyone's talking. Not just our department, people are pissed about how they treated you. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't expect that. You earned respect, Jake said. Grant made people nervous. If they'll do that to their best team lead, what chance does anyone else have? Julia nodded. Even Lisa's asking around. She doesn't look happy. Good, I said. What are you gonna do? Jake asked. I paused. I got an offer from Nordiv. Their eyes widened. But there's the non-compete, I added. Those usually don't hold if you were fired, Julia said quickly. She worked with contracts all the time, she knew the ins and outs. That's what the legal team at Nordiv told me as well, but it's still a bit of a risk. Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. Grant just called for an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. On a Saturday. That's new, Julia said. Mason's account review is Tuesday. Nobody can find your report files. I gave a small, amused smile. Those files are stored right where they should be. But my system's a bit unique. I hadn't intended to create confusion, but I couldn't lie, I felt a little satisfaction. I should head out, I said, grabbing my purse. As I stood, Jake looked at me. Nina, if you end up at Nordiv, just hypothetically, would they be hiring? I looked at the two of them and gave a nod. Hypothetically? Yeah. They're growing fast. They exchanged a look that said everything. The next day, I sat down with Vincent Lee, a lawyer a friend had recommended. His office was small but classy, with rich wood furniture. I laid everything out for Vincent, the email, the termination notice, the whole story. He scanned the documents, then took off his glasses with a sigh. According to him, what happened to me wasn't just unfair, it could be considered legally questionable. Terminating someone after approving their bereavement leave, he explained, might be seen as both a violation of contract terms and a breach of trust between employer and employee. I clarified that I wasn't interested in taking legal action. What I really needed was clarity on whether the non-compete agreement they'd tied to my contract could prevent me from moving forward. Vincent reviewed the document line by line. The restriction was harsh, 12 months of being barred from working for any competitor within 200 miles. It was essentially telling me I'd have to leave my career or move away from the region altogether. When I asked if that clause could actually hold up, he said it would be a tough sell for Iron Ridge. Especially under the circumstances of my dismissal. He leaned back and asked what my next step was. I told him about the offer from Nordiv, stronger title, higher salary, a chance to lead. Vincent nodded and said the burden would fall on Iron Ridge to prove that hiring me posed a real business threat, which was unlikely considering they were the ones who ended the relationship. He jotted down a few notes and advised me to be cautious, but not afraid. From his perspective, I had every right to keep working in my field. Over the weekend, my phone barely stayed silent. One message after another came in from my former team. Saturday's emergency meeting had gone poorly. Grant had pushed hard, assigning extra work without offering any additional compensation. The Mason account files had been found, but no one could make sense of my analysis or how I had structured the data. I had made up my mind. I called Derek Jones. I told him I was accepting the position at Nordiv, on one condition. If any of my former teammates applied, I wanted them to be fairly considered. Derek didn't hesitate. If they had even half my skills, he said, Nordiv would be lucky to have them. Later that day, I signed the offer letter. Division Director of Operations. My salary was 30% higher than what I earned at Iron Ridge, and it came with better benefits and a solid signing bonus. As I walked out of the Nordiv office that afternoon, I checked my phone, 5 new messages. Each one from a core member of my old team, asking to meet up privately. We gathered Wednesday morning at a little cafe downtown. Jake arrived first, then Julia, and eventually the others, Miles, Renee, Helen. No one wasted time. Miles mentioned that the place was falling apart. Grant had started micromanaging everything, and Lisa, the regional manager, was putting pressure on him. Clients were beginning to raise concerns too. Helen added that the Mason account was threatening to pull out. As they took turns speaking, I listened and sipped my coffee. Each story echoed the same theme: frustration, confusion, instability. Jake eventually brought up what everyone seemed to be tiptoeing around. They'd heard I had joined Nordiv. The table quieted, all eyes on me. I confirmed it, and Helen was quick to say they wanted to follow me there. These were people with stable jobs, good ones, by most standards. I asked if they were sure, if they really wanted to take that kind of risk. Renee was the one who spoke up, bitter but honest. If Iron Ridge could fire me for attending my father's funeral, she said, none of them could feel safe there anymore. I explained that Nordiv was growing and hiring, but I couldn't promise them anything. They'd have to go through the process like anyone else. Helen reached into her bag and pulled out printouts. Confirmation emails. All of them had already applied the day before. I was stunned. They hadn't waited for my approval or invitation. Gratitude and respect. A sense of validation I hadn't expected. I told them I'd make some calls. The following Friday, my phone rang at 8 a.m. Lisa Bradford's name lit up on the screen. She didn't waste time. 5 resignations had hit her desk, all from my former team. She wanted to know what was going on. I kept my answer short. I reminded her that I no longer worked at Iron Ridge, and any decisions they were making weren't mine to explain. She pressed further. It looked, in her words, coordinated. I told her people make career moves for all sorts of reasons, and if she wanted answers, maybe she should ask Grant why the most successful team in the company had walked out at the same time. There was a pause. Then she admitted that Grant had made the call to fire me without running it by her. She claimed that if she'd been consulted, she never would have allowed it. Eventually, she said she wanted to bring me back. She was prepared to offer me my old role with a 15% raise and a formal apology. They needed my expertise. The Mason account was on the brink of leaving. I thanked her, but said I'd already taken a position elsewhere. I told her the problem was never about money. Then she asked what it would take. I told her plainly, the only thing that would have made a difference was going back in time and having the company treat me like a human being instead of a burden. The line stayed quiet. After ending that call, I drove straight to Nordiv and arrived early, wanting to get a head start on my first official day. Derek was already in the lobby, grinning as he greeted me. He let me know that all 5 of my former teammates were being seriously considered. Their resumes were impressive, he said, and interviews were set to begin that Wednesday. I thanked him for giving them a fair shot. He waved it off, saying it wasn't a favor. Iron Ridge had let go of incredible talent, and Nordiv stood to gain from that oversight. Several days later, I got a call from Gloria Reed back at Iron Ridge. She sounded cautious, almost like she was watching over her shoulder. Quietly, she told me that Grant Keller had been placed on administrative leave. Lisa had opened a formal investigation into how management was handling bereavement and time-off policies. It felt like a genuine step forward. I told her I was glad to hear it. Gloria went on to explain that the board of directors had gotten involved. Losing an entire specialized team to a direct competitor had rattled the higher-ups, triggering a full review of terminations from the past year. By Monday, all of my former colleagues had received and accepted offers from Nordiv. That evening, we got together for dinner, our first real moment to take a breath and celebrate. We raised glasses in a toast to new beginnings. Julia lifted hers to me, and Jake chimed in, calling me the kind of leader others should try to be. The following week, I received an official letter from Iron Ridge. It acknowledged that my termination had been mishandled and offered a settlement to avoid any future legal action. I accepted, not for the money, but for what it represented, an admission that they had been wrong. That same day, the Mason account signed with Nordiv. After finding out that the entire team they trusted was now with us, they brought their business over without hesitation. The river had shifted, but we had stayed grounded. Just like my dad always said, the current moves, but the rocks remain steady. 6 months in, I stood at the head of Nordive's largest conference room, presenting our division's quarterly results. We'd posted 25% growth, landed 4 major new clients, 2 of them former Iron Ridge accounts, and improved operational efficiency enough to cut costs by 15%. When I finished, Derek leaned back and gave me a proud nod. We had exceeded every projection. I told him it wasn't just me, the credit belonged to my team. Later that day, I walked into my office to find all 5 of them gathered around a cake. Jake told me it had been exactly 6 months since we jumped ship together. I laughed and told them they were ridiculous, but deep down, I was touched. Helen added that everyone was doing better. In their new roles at Nordive, every single person had grown. They had more freedom, better support, and, most importantly, real recognition. For once, they weren't just seen as tools to hit metrics. They were valued. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Iron Ridge was undergoing a major restructuring after losing several key clients. I showed the group. Miles said he'd heard they just lost the Hector contract, which made up nearly a fifth of their regional revenue. Jake added that Grant had cleared out his desk last week. Lisa, it seemed, was trying to salvage what was left. But I didn't feel satisfaction. Iron Ridge hadn't failed because we left, it failed because it made people feel disposable. Because grieving a loved one had been viewed as a lack of commitment. I raised my water glass and made a simple toast. May they learn that a business is only as strong as the way it treats its people.